Hello, and welcome to our February episode of Up to Speed. My name is Mike.mader. I am the dealership industry leader for Baker Tilly, and I'm glad you have joined me today for today's episode. If you are new to Up to Speed, we are here to provide you with relevant, up-to-date information that is quick and easy to digest that pertains to tax, accounting, and operations of an automotive dealership. We show up in your inbox the third Wednesday of the month. You can see past episodes at www.bakertilly.com/dealerships. Today, we're talking about payroll processing and HR support services for auto dealerships. These are two very important functions in any business that often get overlooked. If there were one thing that would keep me up at night as a business owner, it is the possibility of my people not getting paid because I have no one to run the payroll or being sued for an employee issue that could have been easily prevented if we had the right resources. I'm here with Kim Wylam, managing partner of Baker Tilly Vantagen, and we're going to talk about why and when it might make sense to outsource these functions in your dealership. Kim serves in our Baker Tilly Vantagen group within Baker Tilly, which is an entire business unit that's dedicated to all things HR and outside your standard tax and accounting services that are typically offered by most public accounting firms. Welcome, Kim, and thank you for taking some time today to discuss today's topic.
Thank you, Mike, and thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
You bet. So let's get started. Can you provide a little bit of background of the services that you offer through Baker Tilly Vantagen?
Sure. So as Mike said, I'm the managing partner of Baker Tilly Vantagen. We are a wholly owned subsidiary of Baker Tilly. So again, all part of the same Baker Tilly family, although our business unit is dedicated to two specific things, HR and payroll, and anything that encompasses HR and payroll, from recruiting, talent acquisition, employee relations, compensation compliance, and then obviously payroll, from implementing payroll, helping weigh in on wage and hour, setting up payroll, running payroll. And our group is basically divided into two units. One, consulting. So we help our clients with a problem or a project. We come in, we help, we assist. And then what's really becoming on the trendy side and growing is an outsourced or co-sourced relationship where we're working with clients that have a specific ongoing need in either HR or payroll or both. And we are helping fill the void on a retained basis. And that could be, weekly, monthly, quarterly, or even as you need on some sort of retained relationship to be able to provide expertise in these two areas.
Awesome. Thanks, Kim. It's kind of interesting that I actually just realized how in-depth and how detailed you guys are when I was talking to somebody about outsourcing their payroll and found out that you guys do a lot, from the data entry to the processing to the taxes to the whole works, that I didn't realize we actually did. And in the dealership world, that's usually something that is always housed inside, but it's great that we've got the services and the ability to provide that outside the dealership, because I think that is a great thing for the dealers to be able to have another resource to be able to help them out with the payroll functions. So let's get started today with a high level look at what are some of the HR and payroll issues that dealerships might not be aware of that could pose risks to their business.
So that's a great place to start, Mike. One of the areas that we're finding a lot of risk and providing a lot of support in is the remote work, or a worker now who lives in a different place or works in a different place than they did when you originally hired them. Now, a lot of remote work came to play during the pandemic. People were working from home, and then a lot of people had moved if remote work was allowed at their work site. And what we're seeing here is, if you live and work in two different states, there may be subject to employment compliance. Again, making sure that you're recognizing, the appropriate leave requirements, pay requirements, as well as taxation. Again, is there reciprocity in the two locations? Is there not? How are you being set up for that? Again, a lot of these compliance rules have always existed, but they're now really in the forefront as we're starting to see work from home or people traveling. Again, if the client has multiple locations and they are, not even just across state lines, but is one in a metro city and one not in the city. Even at the city level, you're starting to see compliance that differs on the HR and the payroll side. So we've been helping clients, mitigate through these compliance issues, starting with, do you have a policy? What is your policy? What's your communication to employees? As well as now, do we have the systems and the technology to be able to support the policy so that we are not running any compliance issues?
That's awesome. I mean, we don't have a lot of remote workers in the automotive space, just because if you think about it, technicians have got to physically be there to work on the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the times your salespeople are there to demonstrate the vehicle, so on and so forth. But we do have a lot of larger groups that are across state lines. Like you said, one of their dealerships might be in a metro area and one may not. So that is a great resource to be able to have, because the different taxation things can get very confusing. And if you're not up to date on those and stay up to date, because they change, you could cause a lot of issues. So what are some of the challenges with HR and payroll that make outsourcing these functions more beneficial or more favorable for a dealership?
Well, first and foremost, the dealerships are not immune to what's going on in the country, just the general labor shortage. So it's very
Mhm.
hard, again, if to replace anybody who leaves in any function. So, when you're having turnover in the back office, either in HR, payroll, finance, again, everything that's helping run the dealership from an operation side, that causes a void. Somebody has to stop what they're doing, look and recruit for the person, and then hire them. But in the meantime, is what happens. We're starting to see in the dealerships, the bench strength isn't there. They may have one person who's responsible for both
Right.
HR and payroll, or one person just does HR and one person just does payroll. But when you're relying on such a small team, not only fearful if that person is to leave, how that would cause a disruption within, your own workforce of somebody not getting paid on time or not getting paid correctly. It is just making sure that we have the capability to keep that moving. And quite frankly, these are resources that, owners of businesses really don't want to have to spend their time in recruiting. They'd rather spend their time in recruiting salespeople, mechanics, specialty technicians, again, people that are, making sure that the revenue is being generated through the facility. And the back office sometimes is just a given that, it'll just get done and somebody will be able to do that. And with the expertise being such that HR and payroll, those resources really need to have a technical expertise. It is getting more and more difficult to find those individuals as well. So, outsourcing on the payroll side, I've always been a proponent of that, mainly because it gives you the redundancies and the bench strength. Again, when you hire a company and outsource your payroll, the payroll being completed is on them. So if one person is,
Right.
sick or goes on leave or quits, the payroll company is making sure that they have adequate backup resources to keep your payroll going. The same thing is true on the HR side. So again, we don't have to, change the way we're hiring people or onboarding people because our HR person isn't there for the day. It really gives that redundant bench strength to the employer when you're outsourcing, because you're hiring an entity. The other thing is subject matter expertise. So besides giving the redundancy is, many times in a dealership or employers of this type, is the HR or payroll person may know what they know, and they may know everything as it relates to the automotive and the dealership world, but do they know best practices in hiring, best practices in interviewing, best practices in market pay analysis, compensation, total rewards packages? So when you hire a team, you're getting every subject matter expert under all of the disciplines of HR and payroll. So again, if there's a project where we want to take a look at all of our benefits, we've got a subject matter expert who's knows everything around benefits. If we want to look at what our time off policies are, we've got a subject matter expert that could give you guidance on this is what the market is doing with regards to time off. If you want to, move from a standard sick vacation personal scheme into more of a PTO model, we've got the expert. that's great in policy, but there's also a lot of compliance elements to support that. And we've got the experts to be able to support that. And then again, as being part of an accounting firm, we work with the accountants to make sure that financially this is all running through, the GL appropriately, you're reserving liabilities on sick time appropriately. And if you're setting up new earnings codes and other compensation factors, that the taxation is accurate. And again, you're getting the data as it flows through the payroll system in a manageable way that you can act upon it, you could review it and do something with it.
So that is awesome, and I think that is great. I mean, because I remember when I worked in the dealerships that as an office manager slash controller, you wore a lot of hats, and HR ended up being one of them. As you get into larger organizations, you're able to start to be able to bring your own HR person on board. But there's still a lot of larger groups that don't have the HR, and they have the same payroll people doing it, and they don't get that backup. But one of the things that kind of blew me away when I was talking to you guys about the dealerships, you handle a 12 rooftop dealership group, and you're doing the full payroll for them. And one of my thoughts was, how do you handle all the different compensation components that an auto dealership has? I mean, they've got spiffs, they've got commissions, they've got hourly, they got salary. Sometimes the salespeople are paid on the 15th, but then they get a draw check, and there's a lot of complications. And one of the things I always consult with my dealers is the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. Let's not get crazy about these compensation plans. But how do you guys manage that, being off-site of the dealership, to get all that stuff handled appropriately and correctly?
So it all starts with a well-defined implementation plan. So, it's learning the client. And actually, this is the time now when you're entering into a new relationship, either with technology or with professional services, is let's see, how have we been doing things? And really talking through with that CFO, the CEO, the business owner, and saying, all right, this is what we've have been doing for 30 years. But, when I look at these earnings codes, you have 10 set up that haven't been used in 10 years. So do we need to use them? Again, it's like, how do you get to that KISS method? Again, everyone's goal is to make sure that we're streamlined and efficient and as simple as possible. And sometimes it starts with, let's look at how we're operating today. Does this, where do we have some opportunities to change and streamline, and so that we're set up and we're implemented right out of the gates appropriately, making sure that everything is ticking and tying to what happens, again, as it runs through the financials, as it displays on a pay stub, and as it supports an internal HR policy, making sure that all of that is in alignment. And then we spend an awful lot of time implementing. Once you're implemented, now, we have documented procedures and documentation and workflows, again, helping build our team's strength to make sure that they're able to process appropriately and have everything in a documented form, because we know that things would change. Again, as we have a new level of compensation or we get into a new line of service, we have to expect that the policy around compensation and pay could possibly change. So it's always good to have the documentation so you know exactly where to insert and modify, and keep that documented procedures intact, as well as the technology is making sure that we are setting up so that the technology is supporting our business and not the other way around. I've seen far too many clients have set up to be basically the way the technology has dictated, and it didn't really support their business. And now we've got workarounds. We don't want to be in a workaround situation. We want to make sure that the technology that we're paying for and that we're engaging with is able to support these processes end to end with as little to no manual manipulation, and certainly no workarounds. And that's where, again, our expertise is not just in the HR and payroll side, but we've got technical people who know these systems inside and out to make sure that the setup is complete and consistent, and we're not going to get those issues. And then it's really, again, the same way as if we were to onboard a new person. It's getting to know the client, getting to see exactly what's happening, getting to know the employees. The relationship is as successful as the client helps us with that. You know, we never like to be introduced as a vendor. We're always a partner. We make sure that we have dedicated team members. You know their names. You have a way to be able to access them either through a phone or through email. We've got dedicated office hours, and we will even, again, depending on the client need and how much we're servicing them, have on-site visits, whether it's meeting monthly, meeting quarterly, having a presence at the client. You know, what we like to do is not have one size fits all for all our clients, because they are not all one size fits all. The level of service and the level of need helps dictate what we're able to support for them. So it's very different. And Mike, even if the client is not having remote from work, you know, or work from home, we're in a virtual world. You know, there are many times where the payroll person is sitting in their office and somebody's calling from the shop. They're not making their way over. They're calling, they're teamsing, they're texting, they're chatting, and we work no different. So again, it's making sure we've got a two-way line of communication for both the, you know, the leadership as well as the general employees, feeling that they've got a safe, comfortable place to be able to come to, ask a question, for, you know, voice a complaint, a concern, and that we'd handle it appropriately.
So Kim, I got one last question for you. Where were you guys when I was in the dealership?
It's funny because I was that person too. You talk about how you were the controller, payroll, HR. That's where I started my career as well. I said we call these people slash, because I started the first few years of my career. I was a controller, and then I was the controller slash I was doing the payroll person. Oh, and now I'm the HR person, you know. Oh, and now I'm the office manager. Again, when you work for a smaller sized business, everybody wears many hats.
Right.
But again, as the world has evolved, it's become much more complex, much more specialized, so that, you know, the same thing I liken it to, you know, to law and medicine, or, you know, we all go to a good family doctor, a general practitioner, but obviously if we broke our leg, we need to go to an orthopedic surgeon. And that's no different in the HR world, where we've got a lot of good generalists that can, you know, get people in, get their paperwork started, be there as a listening ear, keep compliance afloat. But there are now so many more specialized needs around compensation, compliance, policy, that you required a different level, or somebody who specializes in that, you know, all day, every day. So that's what we like to bring to the table, is that we've got the resources that are going to keep you running, keep you happy, again, be a very, very valued partnership. But on those occasions where you need something different, either from a creative perspective, you're having a hard time hiring people, now we need to get creative, or from a compliance perspective, we bring that level of expertise to be able to join the team at that moment and help solve the problem.
Well, I'm glad I found you guys, and I wish I would have found you when I was working in the dealerships, because it would have made life a lot easier. So, all right, well, that's going to conclude today's episode of Up to Speed. Kim, I want to thank you for giving us some insight on the HR and payroll outsourcing opportunities for our dealership clients. To our audience, thank you for joining us today. And if you have any questions for Kim, her contact number, her contact information is going to be displayed on the screen. Feel free to reach out to her directly. So we look forward to seeing you on our next Up to Speed episode in March, where we will discuss 2023 results and trends for 2024. And remember, we do arrive in your mailbox the third Wednesday of every month. And you can also visit us at our website at www.bakertilly.com/dealerships to view our past Up to Speed episodes. Thank you, and make it a great day.